How would you respond if you were suddenly considered an enemy of your own country? Hi, my name is Ryan Iwamoto. I am a fourth generation American of Japanese ancestry. Today is February 18th and marks 80 years since Executive Order 1966 that President Roosevelt signed. This took away the liberties of a group of people and sent them to internment camps. Some of them are located here. In this video, we'll take a look at some of these locations around Oahu and learn about the aloha that they share despite being considered an enemy of their country. Let's go. On the morning of December 7, 1941, at around 7:57 a.m., Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy. After the battle, over 2,400 lives were lost. All 8 battleships were damaged, 5 of them sank. In addition to Pearl Harbor, all airfields were also attacked, leaving the islands open for invasion. Just a few hours later, American bases in the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island would be attacked and eventually be surrendered and occupied by the Imperial Japanese Army. There was a fear in the minds of the government, military, and community that Hawaii would soon be invaded by Imperial Japan. Following the attack, martial law was declared, and this will remove protections against unjust imprisonment. Now, the FBI already had lists prepared and started rounding people up from all the islands. These are people mainly of Japanese ancestry. There was no evidence that they had committed any sabotage or espionage. These are mostly leaders in the Japanese community. They took them to the U.S. Immigration Office. So when the Americans of Japanese ancestry were taken, they were taken to the building behind me. The building behind me is was the U.S. Immigration Office, but it's still being used as a federal building. So they were taken here, questioned, and then they were shipped off by ferry to the Sand Island internment camp. So let's go over there and take a look. We are at Sand Island Beach Park, and just over to my left is where you would have had the Sand Island internment camp. That's where about 570 people were interned over there. It opened up just after Pearl Harbor got bombed, and it closed around March 1st, and that's about the time when Honouliuli camp, which would be the main camp, started to open. So let's check it out. February 18, 1942, exactly 80 years ago, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the executive order for the forced removal of Americans of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast. Those on the mainland lost their businesses, jobs, and homes. Here we are at Royal Kinea. Now, behind me is where Honouliuli internment camp used to be. So this camp was open in March of 1943. It housed at one point 3,200 POWs and American civilians who were interned here. Barack Obama in 2017 designated the area to be a national monument. Right now we can't go in there though because it's farmland, it's privately owned, but in time there will be a monument where we can visit. In all, there were 16 internment campsites across the Hawaiian Islands. 1,444 people of Japanese descent were interned. 525 were American citizens. The Americans of Japanese ancestry lived with constant anxiety of either being occupied by the Imperial Japanese Army, being taken away by the FBI, or living with the stigma of betraying the community and their country. Here we are at the University of Hawaii, where a group of students serving in the ROTC were disbanded because they were labeled as enemy aliens due to their Japanese ancestry. They petitioned their government to serve in any way possible, and the government granted their request, and the Varsity Victory Volunteers was formed. They put aside their education in order to build roads, bunkers, string barbed wire, whatever that needed to be done in order to defend their islands. This is amazing. These boys could have just sat out the war, but they grew up in Hawaii, and there's something about that spirit of aloha that permeated through the islands into the community. Their selfless attitude and willingness to serve no matter what, they impress those in power so much that the 442 a regimental combat team was formed. The Varsity Victory Volunteers then requested to disband in order to join the 442. In addition, Americans of Japanese ancestry served in the 100th Battalion, 1399 Engineers Construction Battalion, and the Military Intelligence Service. This is Punchbowl, the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, where many who gave their life for their country are buried. The 100th Battalion, due to their bravery, earned the name the Purple Heart Battalion for their never give up, go for broke attitude. The 442nd continued to exemplify this reputation, and both of them were highly decorated. Before the civilians that were liberated, they were known for their aloha, for being generous, kind, respectful for the elderly, and never asked for anything in return. As I learned more about the lives of these Americans of Japanese ancestry and their hearts of aloha, they set aside the labels of being an enemy alien, and they didn't succumb to the temptation of division and separation, but pursued unity. And their deeds didn't go unnoticed. So on February 19, 1976, President Gerald R. Ford wrote a proclamation called An American Promise, where he stated, "We now know what we should have known then. Not only was that evacuation wrong, but Japanese Americans were and are loyal American. I call upon the American people to affirm with me this American promise, that we have learned from the tragedy of that long ago experience forever to treasure liberty and justice for each individual American, and resolve that this kind of action shall never again be repeated." Through their aloha, they helped to bring the country together and return to Hawaii, and help rebuild an island that was struck down but not destroyed. Some of their legacy can be found today, like Times Supermarkets and Central Pacific Bank, both founded by Americans of Japanese ancestry after the war. They helped families recover and helped bring Hawaii to where it is today.
Americans of Japanese ancestry knew who they were, Americans. And though their country changed around them, they did not. And the aloha spirit shined bright within them. And through the aloha, they helped remind the country that in times of crisis, there will be fear. But we can't allow fear to take away the liberties of others. And though the world became dark around them, they allowed their aloha to shine brighter. And that helped bring about a brighter aloha in the islands and in the country. If you like this video, click the like below and share it with others. Until next time, aloha.